Hey guys, how you doing? Just getting home from a friend's house. Just gonna walk home, do a recording. I'm gonna warn you right now. I've definitely smoked some weed. It is definitely the headspace that I'm in. What the heck is going on in the world today, guys? What in the heck? Like, it kills me that sometimes people are like, you millennials, you entitled millennials, and I'm like, do you not see what's happening around you? Are you not aware of how ridiculous and absurd things are getting? And how ridiculous and absurd the life that we're living is? Today I'm walking down the street and it just really dawns on me, like, why in the heck are there so many cars? What's with these individual polluting, absurd automobiles that are carving pathways through our neighborhoods so that individual people can get into a vehicle that fits six and go somewhere they could walk to in 10 to 15 minutes? Or why the hell are they getting into these vehicles and driving an hour and a half to get to work every single day? For what reason and what purpose is it all serving? And it just seems like it's all mainly busy work. It all seems like it's just mainly, like, I work in a toy store. I consider that to be something of a privilege, honestly, because all I'm really doing is attempting to give people a little joy or happiness in their lives. I'm quite fond of children's toys and the toys I had as a child. But even that element is like, all we're doing is distracting ourselves. And that's kind of what Brave New World was about. That what Huxley was talking about. That people will just distract themselves to death. And they'll just play with little doodads and light boxes and story generators and things like this. And it seems to be the case. I know I myself am guilty of it. I like playing video games. I like engaging in that kind of stuff. But then that gets me to thinking about something Neil Gaiman said. Because I used to be very much against like escapism as an art form, even though I would indulge in it. But then Neil Gaiman actually convinced me to just drop that whole attitude. Because escapism is a completely valid way to exist as you search alternate dimensions, lands of imagination, for keys and solutions and ideas for how to live in your own dimension. And he had this really key phrase that he used, which was, the only people who don't want others to escape are jailers. And I thought that was very profound. And I do think it is for this reason that, like, the capitalists have to keep our artists as busy as they possibly can. They have to waste their time as much as they possibly can. You can't have artists outside of the capitalist system. And all artists really are for, at this stage in the game, is to kind of dangle baubles in front of people's heads and to sell things as advertising, right? And one second. See what I'm saying? The capitalists can't have artists that exist outside the capitalist structure, because then those people might actually start to say something about capitalism and start to have alternate ideas about how the world should work. That's one of the things that was most disappointing about the repackaging of Star Trek and the reselling of Star Trek. Like, Star Trek always presented an idea of what the world should look like, right? It was always presenting itself as a place for philosophical discussion. Like, many of the Next Generation episodes were very, they weren't action-packed affairs. Many of them were quite boring, but interesting in a philosophical discussion kind of a way, and in challenging how things should be, or challenging the way things are, and for being an allegory for our own society, and to talk about struggles that exist within that society. And it just seems like they repackaged Star Trek to make it palpable for an audience to enjoy kind of a pulpy movie, but they didn't care at all to actually use it as a platform for discussion of larger moral or philosophical ideas. And my hope for even Picard was yeah, they're going to do that kind of thing. But they didn't. And I'm yet, where's the show on TV that's actually even making the attempt? Right? Where's the show on TV today that's even making the attempt to have some kind of moral or ethical or interesting discussion about anything on any grounds? And the reality is that the capitalists can't have that. They can't actually have a show that is about morals or ethics or any of that kind of stuff, because they understand that they're on the losing side of this. And so much of the media that we're presented today is quasi-fascist. It's the whole concept of the Superman, and that everyone's a hero in their own way. Their ideals are all about power and strength, and the people who have the most might are the most correct. These sorts of ideas, they really permeate the culture. And it's important to keep all of our artists working at Starbucks, because that's what's happening. All of our artists work at Starbucks, and they don't have the energy or the time or any of that to actually create something and put something forward. They don't have the time or the energy to, cut open their consciousness, to investigate the experiences that have happened to them, to then sit down and actually pour it out onto a page in a method that's comprehensible, so that it could be understood. I mean, what a Herculean effort it would take to do this, and yet we just seem incapable of freeing people to be able to explore that. Capitalism requires these people. They'd rather have people making cafe lattes. They'd rather have people making lattes for them as they go off to their banking, jobs or whatever. They'd rather have that than allow people the freedom it requires to actually pursue any kind of art form outside of the self, right? This has become my art form, right? Because it's the only thing that I've got the energy or the time to do. I work a full-time job, and this is my art form because it's all I've got. It's all I can do. I don't have the energy to actually, I try to write, I try to do stuff. I'm gonna make an attempt at getting some writing done tomorrow, because I got these 2 days off in a row, and I feel like today was a pretty restful day. And so I'm able to actually maybe produce something Maybe I'll get 4 pages tomorrow, if I'm lucky. Maybe I'll get 4 pages. And it's like, what a fucking grind this is. Like, what an unbelievable grind this is. And this absurdist idea that, like, oh, you should just produce this stuff in your off time is like, oh yeah, you should put in the same amount of effort that you would into a full-time job. But just do that, like, on your lunch breaks. Like, the arts take psychological energy. It takes standing up against sort of the psychological attacks that we're under. It takes this enormous effort. And then what you produce might not even be good. You know? It might not even be good. But the system, the capitalist system, doesn't reward, or doesn't accept even. It doesn't accept failure. Right? If you actually manage to do any of this and you produce something and it's not immediately consumable by enough people, then you're just sort of cast back to the market, told to sell yourself. So it's this really brutal process. And it seems like the only people who can manage it are these lucky few who did manage to step out of their school into an industry, right? These lucky few. Because most people don't make it. Like, they don't make the step. They don't make the step from, like, their education or their school to an industry. They don't make the step. That it doesn't happen. But the capitalist system doesn't give a crap about that. If you're not immediately successful, if you're not immediately stepping from one ship to another, then you plop down into the ocean, right? That's really how it is. If you're on one boat and that boat is supporting you, and then they say, okay, you can't spend any more time on this boat, you better have another boat to step onto, right? And sometimes I see people, it's like their whole life has been that they are standing atop this very small pillar that's steadily crumbling under their feet. And if they don't step off of that pillar that's steadily crumbling under their feet onto another pillar that appears to be slightly more stable but is itself crumbling, but if you don't do that, then you're going to be dropped as the pillar collapses. And I've seen so many people who are living their life exactly like that. That's exactly how I've lived my life. And sometimes I've fallen. Sometimes the pillars crumbled and I've just fallen. I've never fallen so badly that I've been homeless. But I've definitely been like one step down, or one step up, or whatever. Like, I definitely knew that it was on the table. And boy, I consider myself to be very fortunate that it didn't happen that way. And so when I see these people, right, and they're living in the street, for God's sakes, why in the hell are there people who are living on the streets? Why in the hell are there people who are begging in the streets? Why in the hell is that happening at all? Why in the hell is that happening at all? Right? For all the liberal government's talk of the CERB and support for workers and all of this, right? They're doing fuck all for people who are living in the street. Somebody once sent me like an article like, oh, the liberal government just bought a bunch of motels that they're going to use for the homeless. And I'm like, that's an extension of the shelter system that's more expensive than a basic income would be. And it's a bailout for the hotel and motel industry is what it is. Gussied up to look like something to be done for the homeless. So you're going to dislocate the homeless, as you always do. And you're going to put them in these like boarding houses, essentially, what you're turning them into. And instead of giving them the resources that they need in order to rent a place for themselves, to get food for themselves, right? to be reconnected to the economy, you're just going to kind of grab them and put them in these hotels and motels that you're transferring into shelters, basically. And it's going, meanwhile, there's just like all of these empty, like there's enough empty places to house the homeless right now. You could house the homeless right now with the empty spaces that we have, right? I think you could do it a bunch. You could do it like 2 or 3 times, but we just choose not to. Because what it'd do is it would actually deflate the market, right? That's why they can't do that. Because it would actually deflate the market and make rent more affordable. Because these guys are just sitting on it, right? They're just sitting on it. They're just sitting on these properties. Drives me crazy, man. It drives me crazy. Like the biggest scam of our lives is being perpetrated in front of our face. Capitalism is just like this huge, enormous scam where there's these billionaire players and they're using our lives as commodities and they're using our housing as a commodity and for them to gamble on in this kind of big casino system they've created for one another. And to them it's all just this big game because they're so disconnected from any of the basic lives of the people they exploit. And we're just supposed to bob our head and go along with it. And it just seems like that's what's happening, right? I feel like at this point in the game, if you're voting liberal or conservative, you're just bobbing your head and going along with it. And honestly, I'm not that impressed with the NDP. I'm not that impressed with the NDP, right? We won. A little token change here. Oh yeah, okay, good. I still go to work 9 a.m. for people I don't know? Okay, great. Like, we need to have like a full scale shift in the way that we think as a people. I think we're not even close to there. We're still bobbing along with the capitalists. We're still bobbing along. But what we should really be doing is cutting ties. Just goodbye, capitalists. Like, vote for somebody who's going to immediately put the economy in this lockdown. Just put the economy in a lockdown. Give everyone a basic income so they can still get food, right? Give everybody the resources they need for survival, right? Keep food production moving. Keep the lights on, obviously. All the necessary things that people expect living in a civilized society. And just lock the economy down. Tell people not to go to work. Right? Take control over the mechanisms of the society. Take it away from these absolute lunatics. Right? Take it away from these absolute lunatics who are doing just the most obscene and insane stuff. And start expecting elected representatives who you can actually vote for and vote out to provide these services instead, right? You can't vote out the boss of Loblaws. You can't do it. It's just not possible. You can't vote out the boss of Bell or of TELUS. You can't vote out your own boss. The person who you're working for right now, you can't vote them out. You can vote out an elected representative, and you should expect that representative to have control over the mechanisms of your society. Or else you're just enslaved to them. All right, I'm out of time. I love you all, guys. If you're at the end of this thing and you tolerated that, hit the subscribe button. Like, share, do all the good stuff. Hit all the bells, hit all the whistles. Go see your neighbors. All right, I love you all. Bye-bye.